Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the channel. My name is Sky, and today I'm going to be bringing you a guide on Rapier Musket in Expeditions. So what are we going to be talking about? Firstly, we're going to go through the pros and cons of the Musket and Rapier. What are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, and what are some things you would need to improve on to become the best player possible? Then we're going to move towards talents, specifically for the PvE expeditions. What to pick up, what to ignore, what's really good and what's performed well for me, so you guys can try it out yourselves. After that, we're going to talk about gems, attributes, and perks. Then we're going to be moving on to the real juicy stuff, ladies and gentlemen, the single target rotations. This will include, min-maxing to the best you possibly can so you can do the most damage possible with that musket or rapier. After that, we're going to be moving toward AOE, where it really becomes only efficient when there's 4+ targets, and some general tips on that, and rotations on that as well. After that, we're going to be moving on to a summary and outro to pretty much wrap up everything and let you all know how I think it's performing and what we can do to improve the most we can. So I hope you all have some time. Feel free to skip to any one of these parts if you're looking for something in particular. Let's get started. Also, make sure you stay tuned till the end for a chance at our channel's first official giveaway. A lot of people would say that this weapon combo is, quote, useless in the endgame, and I would have to agree with them. Only if you aren't using the ridiculously high ceiling that this weapon combo has to offer. Both of these weapons require min-maxing and a ton of practice to be able to keep up with or even beat other weapons in DPS. Some pros for this weapon combo is that we have the very big advantage that we can crit on any musket shot as long as it's a headshot. We have very high consistent single target DPS with the Rapier using Evade and Tondo. We're also very versatile. We can hit targets from a mile away, and then, if the healer needs help and there's a lot of mobs on him, we can spread our Tondo bleeds and start slowly chipping down those mobs that are focusing our healer when our tank is too busy. Some downsides to this weapon combo is that it requires a ton of ammo. Also, is missing with your musket significantly lowers your damage. If you load up that powder burn and you go for that headshot and you miss, you feel it immediately. That's why it's so high skill cap to use these weapons. Having the proper knowledge and proper rotations for these two weapons is going to be very crucial for effective damage on even keeping up with some of these people like Fire Staff and Ice Gauntlet or Great Axe Hatchet. Another downside is that we're very squishy and we're very weak, so dancing in and out of combat could be dangerous, but doing it properly can lead to greater DPS. Now let's move on to specific talents for expeditions, right? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so first we're going to start off with the musketry, and then we'll move into the rapier. So to start off with the musket, there's going to be some key talents that you're going to need to pick up in order to do a really effective DPS. One of them is critical reload. Landing 3 headshots within a certain amount of time of each other grants an instant reload. We're going to grab our first ability, which is powder burn. We're going to grab backdraft to increase our standard musket shots by 12% while the target has the fire debuff on them. And then we're going to grab chronic trauma, which, if it's a headshot on the powder burn, it increases the duration to 13 seconds. That's very crucial. We're going to pick up shooter stance. We're going to grab shoot more, so instead of 3 shots in shooter stance, it's 5. And we're going to grab marksman. If 3 consecutive shots hit the same target, reduce all other musket cooldowns by 25%. This is very helpful for getting off more powder burns and, potentially other abilities as well. After that, we're going to grab salt on the wounds for increased damage when the target's lower HP. We're going to grab weakened defense for the armor penetration against those heavy armor mobs. And we're going to grab sticky bomb for helpful AOE situations. Now, I recommend grabbing sticky bomb because I'd say most of the dungeons and expeditions that you go run, there's going to be a lot of AoE fights. Now, if you're doing arenas where it's timed and it's mostly going to be a DPS check on bosses, scratch out sticky bomb and grab power shot and finish out the power shot tree. But if not, and you're just doing regular expeditions and stuff, grab sticky bomb. The damage is super, super helpful for AoE situations, and combining that with Tondo as well as other things. After we grab sticky bomb, we're going to grab tactical reload for instant reloads on our dodges. That is very crucial for our DPS rotation. After that, we're going to grab empowering headshot for 10% increased damage after we land a headshot. And then we're going to grab called shot resupply for cooldown reduction after we land headshots even more. So, you start to see that all these headshot abilities start lining up. It's only going to get crazier, by the way. So, you know, practicing with that musket and getting those headshots is going to be so crucial, and, you know, competing with damage with other characters as well. We're going to grab heightened precision. Successful hits with a musket grant a sackable 2.5% damage increase. So the more accurate you are with your weapon, the more rewarding it is for you. So missing shots is going to completely ruin your damage, and it's something you're going to have to keep note of. Hit your mark, increase headshot and critical hit damage to the target the further they are away from you. There are going to be times where you're going to have to kite mobs and, you know, avoid mechanics on bosses, and you're going to have to get really far away. And, you know, grabbing something like this could increase your damage potentially, so you definitely want to pick that up. Remove the damage fall off meters. You know, like I said, from 50 plus meters away, you're going to be potentially hitting them from far away. We're going to grab Sniper for the 3 times optical zoom and headshot damage increase. Now, for these last 2 points, I would grab Kick 'em while they're down for the 10% damage with an active debuff. Now, that includes your Powder Burn debuff, and also Empowering Weakness. Hitting a target with an active debuff triggers Empower, increasing players' damage by 10% again. So now you have all these things to increase your damage, and if you line them up, you can be hitting 3.5k, close to 4k headshots with that musket easily, no problem. And, you know, I'm landing 3.3k musket headshots on bosses, and I don't even have good gear. So imagine if you have a really high gear score, you can be absolutely chunking bosses and really taking them down effectively. But you need to line it up, and you need to land those headshots, so practice that. Now, let's move on to the Rapier. Now, for the Rapier and Musket combo, you want to look at using these weapons in unison when you can. Personally, I'm not going to grab Flurry because that requires me to be in melee for too long. I'm going to first grab Evade and go all the way down into Crescendo for the cooldown reduction on those attacks. We're going to grab Tondo for the bleed, and we're also going to grab Flourish and Finish. Now, these two together with the musket can pair very well. Usually what I do is I blow all my cooldowns on my musket, I swap to my Rapier, you know, apply a Tondo stack, and then swap back to my musket, start getting some lock and loads in there, instant reload shots, and then I swap back to my Rapier, finish off my Tondo stacks, and use a Flourish and Finish it for some heavy damage. You want to grab Thirst for Blood for the cooldown reduction on, you know, heavy AOE situations. It allows you to almost use Tondo like back to back, which is incredibly useful. You want to finish out the Tondo tree as well for the 100% damage if they're too far away from you. You want to grab Light Edge for the 8% damage on the, you know, 2 quick light attacks. You want to grab the 5% more damage to targets with bleed, and then you want to grab Refreshing Strikes. Refreshing Strikes is super useful if you're behind the target and you're also spamming evade with your basic attacks. Your cooldowns will come up super quick, and you can deal really good damage with that. Now, also On Guard is very good for targets with higher percentage of health. So boss fights, this is going to be very useful for, you know, applying your Tondos and Flourish and Finishes and using evade if needed and the situation calls for it. Then after that, we're going to finish out Flourish and Finish and grab our Bloody End. So, you know, grabbing Red Curtains and grabbing Refreshing Strikes potentially gives you a 6% cooldown reduction on all your attacks while you're behind a target, so you can really use your abilities effectively if you're using the Rapier properly. The key with the Rapier is all about positioning and getting behind the enemy as much as possible, and if you can't get behind them, you know, you pull out that musket, load up that powder burn, and, you know, you start going to town on them with that shooter stance. Now, the only way I would change out of Flourish and Finish is if a fight requires a lot more mobility and instant damage instead. So I would take out Flourish and Finish, and then I would grab Flesh, and then, you know, grab Momentum instead of that. Now, personally, I think Flourish and Finish is very good as it is. You know, stacking up a couple Tondos and then using a Flourish and Finish behind the enemy can hit them really hard. But if it requires more melee and more on-demand damage, you know, I would play it safe and grab Flesh and grab Momentum for the quick damage on evade as well. What's good for PvE? What's good for these expeditions? There's a few options. Number one, a good option would be Emeralds. Emeralds are great for, you know, end of fights and, you know, getting 20% more damage against targets with less than 30% health. So 20% additional damage on top of everything else that you're getting is a lot of damage that, you know, it's great for executing, you know, the finale of that boss and making sure you finish that fight stronger. Another one I would recommend is the Diamond. 15% damage and outgoing healing while at full health. So, you know, if you're good at dodging mechanics and you know what the boss fight is and, you know, you could avoid damage as much as possible, I would recommend going with the Diamond. If you want to play it safe, you go with the Emerald and, you know, you execute, you know, the target more effectively. But if you're solid at, you know, dodging and making sure you don't get hit by things and AOE and mechanics and such, I would recommend going with the Diamond because, you know, it is more damage throughout the fight as an entirety. The last one that is a maybe would be the Cut Pristine Opal. 15% damage while your stamina is not full. I mean, I think this would be good, you know, with different weapons, but with the musket, I would probably stick with the Diamond or the Emerald for your DPS increases. Now, if we're talking about the Rapier, I would definitely recommend the Emerald because I know once you get into melee, there's no way you're going to be full HP most of the time. So Emerald for executing would be very, very effective as well. You know, also if you're running an intellect build, you might have to grab a ruby or, you know, one of these elemental gems to, you know, increase your damage based off your intellect. Now, personally, as you know, I roll with dexterity because I think it's, you know, it gives me more mobility. It's more consistent damage. I prefer the every 10 seconds automatic crit over anything. So, you know, that's just me personally. If you're rolling with intellect, obviously I would grab one of the elemental gems and, you know, roll with that. But if you're rolling with the dexterity build like I am, I would definitely recommend for both of them either the Emerald, so you execute, you know, way more damage, or for the musket, potentially the Diamond if you're good at dodging mechanics and such. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so to briefly go over the perks, there's really only a few options that stand out the most for the musket and rapier. Number one, the most standout option is the empowering shooter stance on the top right. Hitting a target while in shooter stance grants empower, increases damage by 22% for 3 seconds. Now, the reason why this is so strong is because we're setting up our burst for that shooter stance window anyways. So having that additional percentage damage on there is super, super effective. Also, this perk doesn't require you to have it specifically on your weapon. So you can also get this on a piece of armor and, you know, not take up a weapon perk slot and, you know, use it for something else. So that makes it very effective. You know, another very, very effective one, since we're going to be going for so many critical hits and headshot damage, Vorpal and Vicious are going to be absolutely mandatory. If you have a chance at getting these, you know, you're gonna take it. Like, these are massive flat percentage damage increases for what you're gonna be focusing on, and it's those big boy headshot damage. A little less impressive is Keenly Empowered and Enchanted. Now, Enchanted's good, don't get me wrong, but we want to build the habit of getting those headshots. We don't want to build the habit of body shots and stuff like that, because if you're going to be building that habit, there's no point of using the musket anyways. Now, Keenly Empowered is pretty good, and it's not bad. You know, I would take it, obviously, and be very happy with it, but Empowered Shooter Stance is very similar, but just better all around. And, you know, Vorpal is 1% damage less, and you can have it uptime 100%. So, Keenly Empowered's good, and I would be happy with it, but, you know, that 5 to 10 second duration maybe where you might not have it, it could be kind of tough. And the last and final option is, you know, if it's there, I'll take it, you know, sure, whatever. It's Keenly Jagged. Now, on critical strike causes a bleed that deals 7% weapon damage per second for 10 seconds. Now, it isn't awful, but it's not the best thing, and it is a DPS increase, and it does help us on what we're going to be focusing on most, which is our crit damage. So, you know, you pairing that with the Powder Burn can have some good damage over time effect. It's not bad, it's not good, but it's something we'll take. Now, ladies and gentlemen, for stats. Now, personally, I use light armor. I use light armor for that damage increase, but it does cost me to have to put some points into Constitution, and I'm also wearing a lot of Constitution gear right now. I just hit 60, so my gear is all over the place right now. I'm just trying to get a high gear score, but my gear is a mess. But for specific attributes, personally, I go with Dexterity because that automatic crit every 10 seconds is so massive to our whole damage. It's so much. It could save me so much by giving me, more cooldown reduction, 10% increased damage if, we have the talent ability. All these things will line up if I get automatic crits, and anytime I have a chance for an automatic crit, it helps me so much. So I also put some points into Constitution because occasionally, as I learned, I didn't have any points in the Constitution, and I would just get one shot by any mechanic that I messed up on. So obviously, it's a better DPS increase to stay alive throughout the fight than to just invest the rest into intelligence. Personally, that's what I would do. I would go minimum 50 Constitution, maybe even more. I'd have to do more testing on that. But I would definitely invest some points into Constitution because you don't want to get one-shotted and be that guy waiting outside the gate while everyone else is fighting. Like, nah, not going to happen. Like, you want to stay in that fight as long as you can. You want to, down that boss to get the loot. So, personally, I go through the 300 Dexterity, get that automatic crit, try to get up some Constitution as well for that extra health. Now, if you're going Intellect, I would recommend going 250 Intellect and then some Dexterity, some Constitution. I would not recommend going max Intellect because the 30% damage on first hit on full health target, it's kind of useless in PvE unless you get the very first hit, and even then it's very minuscule. It's not worth it. So I would take the other 50 points and invest it into Dexterity and Constitution. And, you would be doing some good damage. Make sure your gems are socketed properly with the elemental gems, and you should be good to go. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so we're in game right now, and, a basic single target rotation with the Musket and Rapier combo would really be as follows, right? You would have your powder burn shot preloaded. So when there's about 2-3 seconds left on the pull timer, I would toss out my sticky bomb. I would get my powder burn on them, roll, reload, and then I would go into my full rotation of shooter stance, 5 shots, instant reload again, immediately after load a powder burn, and then we're off to the races once more. And then, after that, I would continue to do my basic rotation of, hitting headshots, using my tactical reload on cooldown, and, just using my cooldowns effectively. Now, you want to make sure that you don't use your powder burn, and the dot isn't on them, the dot, which is the damage over time effect, without you having shooter stance ready to go, because if you go into the Musket's abilities, you see Backdraft, which 12% increased damage while the target's on fire. You want to pair that with using as much shots in that window as possible while getting empowering headshots, while getting heightened precision, getting the damage from sniper, the empowering weakness debuff, the kick them while they're down debuff. All these things you want to have almost into one small window of shooter stance and getting off as many critical hits as you can. So just single target, that's one thing you want to line up in that as well. So we would, use our powder burn, our tactical reloads as much as possible, and, really have those short windows of big burst damage. Now, the only time I would ever swap out from my Musket to my Rapier is if, maybe there's a couple mobs on my healer. Maybe enough to where Tondo and, using Evade and Flourish and Finish becomes more efficient than just single target damage. Then I would swap out of my Musket. But if not, I'm going to, keep on using my Musket because the damage is incredibly high if you land those headshots. Go into my shooter stance and just, completely chunk bosses into pieces. Now, if you're trying to do a single target rotation with your Rapier, obviously you want to keep up Tondo as much as possible. Use Flourish and Finish on cooldown because it's more effective that way. Tondo on cooldown, evade basic attack spamming, flourish, finish, and, you know, just consistent DPS pressure. Now, if it's an AOE situation, you know, obviously you want to preload your powder burn on your musket, you know, just to have that up. What I like to do is, let's say they're all grouped up on this target right here. Let's say that's my tank. I would throw the bomb on my tank. I would hit whatever target's there. I would dash forward, Tondo AOE, so the cooldown's very low. Try to stay behind the targets. Try to Tondo as much as possible. And just keep that Tondo up as many targets as possible, because as that bleed is ticking on more and more targets, it becomes more and more efficient to use. And the higher stacks that you get on that bleed can deal potentially way more damage. So with the Tondo, it deals 85% weapon damage over 12 seconds. And if you get to stack that up to maybe 2-3 times, it deals 3 times more than that, which, you know, 240% weapon damage on 4 or 5 targets ends up being a lot of damage. Combining that with the initial strike from Flourish, which is also an AoE as well, you hit them for, you know, a decent amount of damage, and then combining that with your sticky bomb, you end up dealing a pretty good amount of AoE damage. Now, it's not the best in the game. It's not like Warhammer or, you know, Ice Gauntlet or Fire Staff, but it's still something to have you keep up somewhat with them. Where we shine is on those boss fights where we're hitting 6, 7, 8 headshots in a row, and we can potentially blow by people in damage, and there's nothing they can do to even keep up with us. Okay, so to end this video, you know, this is your basics to endgame guide for expeditions with the Rapier Musket. There's a lot of information here that's very, very useful that I wish I knew before I started doing this. So I really hope it helps you out. A couple big announcements right now is at the end of the week, I believe Saturday night, I am going to be streaming live either on Twitch or on YouTube. I have to figure that out. But I will be keeping you guys updated on that as well. Also, we're going to be doing a giveaway on either a pair of headphones, a keyboard, or a mouse. I'm going to have you guys vote for what you would like to, you know, have the potential to win during the week. And the last bit of pretty big news is I'm going to be doing a series of me at level 60. And, you know, it's going to be showing my journey of everything that I'm doing, what I'm doing to gear, you know, important things. And then at the end of the week, I'm going to hold off on, you know, some really important content to live stream it with you guys. And we can even do live Q&As, just talk, hang out, and just enjoy each other's time and enjoy the game. And you know, just try to have a nice community and enjoy the game together, you know, to get closer with you all. I mean, I love you all so much. I appreciate everything you guys do for me. All the subscribers, all the likes. I try to comment back to you as much as I can, and I appreciate everything so, so much. I'm so excited to continue this journey with you all, and I'm really happy I have the chance to do this. My name is Sky from the Comeback Kids, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.